Welcome to Understand All. I'm your host, Aslekeir Gairleif. Today, we're embarking on a mind-bending journey into the realm of the simulation hypothesis. So buckle up, grab your thinking cap, and let's dive in. Imagine this. You're going about your day, sipping your coffee, scrolling through your phone, when suddenly a thought hits you like a glitch in the matrix. What if all of this, the world around us, our lives, our very existence, is nothing more than a sophisticated computer simulation? It sounds like the stuff of science fiction, right? Well, the simulation hypothesis has been gaining traction in recent years, with some of the world's brightest minds taking it very seriously. The idea that we might be living in a simulated reality has deep roots in philosophy, dating back to ancient thinkers like Plato and his famous allegory of the cave. But it was Nick Bostrom, a philosopher at Oxford University, who really put the simulation hypothesis on the map in 2003 with his groundbreaking paper, Are You Living in a Computer Simulation? Bostrom's argument is based on three key propositions. First, he suggests that a technologically mature post-human civilization would have enormous computing power. Second, that such a civilization would likely run many simulations of their evolutionary history. And third, that we're almost certainly living in one of those simulations. Let that sink in for a moment. According to Bostrom, the odds that we're the one civilization that's not in a simulation are pretty slim. Now, I know what you might be thinking. This all sounds a bit far-fetched, right? But consider this. According to a 2016 survey conducted by the technology company SurveyMonkey, 37% of respondents believed it was more likely than not that we are living in a computer simulation. That's more than a third of people who think the Matrix might be real. But it's not just public opinion that's fueling interest in the simulation hypothesis. Rapid advancements in technology, particularly in the fields of virtual reality and artificial intelligence, are making the idea seem more plausible by the day. The global virtual reality market size was valued at a whopping USD 15.81 billion in 2020 and is expected to grow at a compound annual growth rate of 18.0% from 2021 to 2028, according to Grandview Research. And then there's quantum computing, which could potentially blow traditional computing power out of the water. In 2019, Google's quantum computer, Sycamore, achieved quantum supremacy by performing a task in 200 seconds that would take the world's fastest supercomputer 10,000 years, as reported in the journal Nature. If we can achieve that kind of computing power, who's to say a simulation of our entire universe is out of the question? But the simulation hypothesis isn't just about technological feasibility. It also raises profound questions about the nature of reality itself. Quantum mechanics, for instance, tells us that at the subatomic level, reality behaves in ways that are fundamentally different from our everyday experience. Particles can exist in multiple states simultaneously, and can even become entangled across vast distances. Could these strange quantum phenomena be evidence that we're living in a simulation? Some scientists think so. In a 2017 paper published in the journal Science Advances, theoretical physicist S. J. Olson argued that certain features of quantum mechanics, like the infamous double-slit experiment, make more sense in the context of a simulated reality. If one takes the simulation hypothesis seriously, Olson wrote, then those same experiments are telling us that the visible, high-level world we see is an illusion. The real action is happening at a much deeper level. But not everyone is convinced. Critics of the simulation hypothesis point out that even if we could create a simulation of our universe, the computational power required would be unimaginably vast. In a 2017 interview with The Verge, physicist Sabine Hossenfelder estimated that to simulate just a few hundred atoms would require a computer memory that's several billion times larger than all the information that's ever been produced by humanity. And then there's the question of why. Why would a post-human civilization bother simulating a universe like ours, with all its imperfections and suffering? Some proponents of the simulation hypothesis argue that it could be for scientific research, or perhaps even entertainment. But others suggest that if we are in a simulation, it might be for a purpose we can't even begin to fathom. Despite the challenges and the unanswered questions, the simulation hypothesis continues to captivate the imaginations of scientists, philosophers, and the general public alike. A 2016 article in The New Yorker noted that the idea has been referenced in popular TV shows like Rick and Morty and Black Mirror, and has even inspired a quasi-religious movement called simulation theology. But beyond the pop culture appeal, the simulation hypothesis raises profound existential and ethical questions. If we are living in a simulation, what does that mean for free will? Are our choices and actions predetermined by the code that underlies our reality? And if we do manage to create our own simulations one day, what ethical obligations would we have to the simulated beings living inside them? These are the kinds of questions that keep philosophers like Nick Bostrom up at night. In a 2016 interview with The Guardian, Bostrom said, "If we're in a simulation, then the cosmos that we are observing is just a tiny piece of the totality of physical existence. Whereas most people assume that the physical world that we see around us is the whole of reality, I think that's not correct." But for all the mind-bending implications of the simulation hypothesis, it's important to remember that it's still just that, a hypothesis. We don't have any direct evidence that we're living in a simulation, and some would argue that we may never be able to prove or disprove it definitively. In a 2019 article for Scientific American, science writer John Horgan argued that the simulation hypothesis is ultimately untestable and therefore unscientific. "The simulation hypothesis is fun to think about," Horgan wrote, "but I suspect it's not really science, because it's not clear what evidence could refute it." Others, however, remain undeterred. Billionaire tech entrepreneur Elon Musk has famously said that there's a 1 in billions chance that we're not living in a computer simulation. And in a 2016 interview with The Verge, philosopher David Chalmers suggested that even if we can't prove the simulation hypothesis, it might still be rational to believe in it. You're not going to get a proof that we're not in a simulation because any evidence that we get could be simulated, Chalmers said. But if you do a probability calculation, I think you get maybe a 20% chance that we're in a simulation. So where does that leave us? Well, maybe it doesn't matter. Whether we're living in a simulation or not, we still have to live our lives, make our choices, and try to find meaning and purpose in the world around us. As philosopher Alvin Plantinga put it in a 2016 article for the New York Times, "If we are living in a simulation, then the simulator is in charge of the simulation. We are not." And this means that the simulator is free to set up the simulation in any number of ways. In other words, even if we are living in a simulation, it's still our reality. And in that reality, we have the power to think, to question, to explore, and to try to understand the nature of our existence, simulated or not. So the next time you find yourself wondering if the world around you is real, remember this: even if it's not, it's still the only world we've got. And that in itself is a pretty mind-bending thought. And that's a wrap for today's episode. I hope you enjoyed our deep dive into the simulation hypothesis and that it left you with plenty to ponder. Remember to keep an open mind, keep asking questions, and keep exploring the wonders of the world or simulation around you. Until next time, this is Aslekeir Gairleif signing off.